Good morning. This recording is for Algebra 1, Chapter 8, Lesson 8. We'll be talking about factoring by grouping today. And you might be a little mad at me because you can use factoring by grouping to kind of sort of skip the guess and check for trinomial factoring. But I still think it's more important that you know how to do it by guess and check than you know how to do it by factoring by grouping. So even though factoring by grouping might be easier, I still need you to know how to do it the other way. Okay, so factoring polynomials with four terms, also known as quadrinomials. We're going to group the first terms together and the second two terms together and factor out a common factor for each, then use to form your two binomial groups, which is your factored answer. If done correctly, your two factored answers should be the same. Then FOIL to check. So here is an example. We have 5t to the fourth plus 20t to the third plus 6t plus 24. So we're going to group, all right, two-factor by grouping. Your polynomial must be in standard form. Yes, it must be in standard form. So it means that the highest degree exponent should be on the left and your lowest degree should be on the right, and it should go in descending order. Very important. Okay, technically it can go in reverse order and still work out, but it just means your polynomial factored answer will be a slightly different format, but still the same answer. Okay, so we're going to group these two together. The first two go together and the second two go together. And what can be factored out? What can be factored out? Well, 5t to the third can be factored out of 5t to the fourth plus 20t to the third. So if I were to distribute that 5t to the third to the t plus 4, I'm going to get the original two sets of terms. What can I factor out of the next one? Well, I can factor out a 6 left with t plus 4. So do you notice how that t plus 4 and the t plus 4 are exactly the same? You will know you have done your factoring correctly if you get two binomials that are the same when you're factoring by grouping. All right, so now on to the answer. 5t to the third plus 6. Now notice how that thing that I factored out first, out of the first two groups, are now going together. And they're being added because that is an add and that's an add, okay? Well, the second one is an add because the first one's an add, all right? So then the t to the fourth, since there's a repeat, we only need one of them. Now if you FOIL, you're going to check and see that you've got your answer correct. So I'm going to now go ahead and FOIL. There you go. 5t to the fourth plus 20t to the third plus 6t plus 24. It works. So again, when you've got that duplicate polynomial, in this case t to the fourth and t to the fourth, that's when you know you've actually done your factor by grouping correctly, because you're going to end up with the same binomial twice. All right. There you go. So one of your binomials will always repeat. You only need one for your answer. Okay? All right. So here's the next problem. Remember, a polynomial is not completely factored until there are no common factors other than one. You may be able to factor out a common term before you do a factor by grouping. So let's see if we can find a GCF for 45m to the fourth minus 9m to the third plus 30m to the second minus 6m. Well, guess what? There is one. And I've already listed out the factors for each term. And then I'm going to circle the ones that they have in common. And guess what, guys? That's my GCF. That's my greatest common factor for all four terms. So I'm going to pull it out. All right? So I pulled out 3m out of all four of my factors, leaving me 3m times the quantity 15m to the third minus 3m to the second plus 10m minus 2. All right? And again, if you were to distribute that 3m, you're going to get the original, so you know it's still okay. All right, so now let's go ahead and factor by grouping. So there was the original problem again from before, and now we're going to group the first two terms, and I'm going to pull out the common factor for those two groups. The first group, 15m to the third minus 3m to the second, I can pull out a 3m to the second, leaving me 5m minus 1. The second group, 10m to minus 2, I can pull a 2 out, leaving me 5m minus 1. And guess what? Those two are the same, which means I did something correct. If you're not getting those same two terms, either you didn't pull out your GCF in the first place correctly, or you're not doing the pull out, here correctly, okay? Again, you're going to end up with a repeat binomial, and that's how you know you're doing it correct. All right, so I'm going to group the first two that I pulled out, my GCFs from each term out, which is a 3m to the second plus 2, and again, that goes there, and that goes there, and then I'm going to keep one of the 5m minus 1s, and that's my answer. Oh, and don't forget the 3m, because you need the GCF that you pulled out at the very, very beginning in your final answer. So your final answer is 3m times 3m to the second plus 2 times 5m minus 1. Final factored answer. Check that out. All right, we're on a roll, so let's keep going. All right, here's the thing I talked about at the beginning of the video, that you can factor by grouping with 3 terms, with a trinomial. This is sort of a shortcut from Chapter 8, Lesson 6, but I don't recommend it if you want to go far and long in math, because if you do, this will just make you lazy, and you can't be lazy if you want to go further on in math. Sorry, it's true. Just like in any other subject, if you're lazy now, it's only going to bite you on the butt later. Okay? I said it, I mean it, just listen up. Okay, but if you do want a shortcut because maybe you're having a hard time thinking about all the different ways that you could do this with your table from Chapter 8, Lesson 6, here is the shortcut. Find a times x. Well, in this case, it would be, step 1, a times c, this is actually a multiplication, a times c is 48 times 5, which is 240. Step 2, find the two factors of a times c that sum to b. So what two numbers times each other give you 240, and those same two numbers, when you add them, give you 46. Well, that would be 6 and 40, and 6 and 40. All right, step 3, we're going to rewrite the trinomial into a quadrinomial using the info that we had from before. All right, the 6 plus 4 times x, okay? Now, the thing is that you don't necessarily know where the 6 and the 40 go. Now, you can kind of use your logic because you know you're going to have to factor the first two terms and the second two terms to get your final answer, and you know you need to have a repeat binomial, okay? So that can kind of give you a hint. The thing is that if you go through all this factoring once you've passed step 3, and you're not getting your repeat binomial, that means that you have your two terms that you're now multiplying by to get the center term switched, okay? And I'll talk about that in just a second, and just to reinforce. So I've now officially turned a trinomial into a quadrinomial, all right? So step 4 is to factor by grouping. So I'm going to run out of space eventually, but it'll just get really tiny. So now we have 48x squared plus 6x plus 40x plus 5. Factor by grouping, and hey, look at that. I've got a repeat term, 8x plus 1 and 8x plus 1. That means that I picked the right order for my 6x and my 40x, because I could have honestly put the 40x next to the 48x squared and the 6x next to the 5, and factored by grouping, but I might not have gotten my repeat binomial. If you don't get your repeat binomial, just go back to step 3 and flip your two terms, all right? Put them in the other order in the center so that the other one goes first and the other one goes second. You get what I'm saying, right? Okay, so go ahead, finish your factor by grouping, and you're going to get 6x plus 5 times 8x plus 1. And again, if you don't believe me, FOIL. All right, the other thing is just a repeat of what I just said. If you get to step 4 and you don't have the repeat binomial, that means you may have switched the center two terms and you need to switch them the other way. So these right here, these two, if you don't get the double binomial, that means you need to switch these, okay? But I did, so 6x does come before 40x, okay? And again, you can kind of think about it beforehand. What could I factor out before I even place them? And that will help you figure out which order they go in, all right? All right, there we go. All right, this is the last slide. Factoring volumes of rectangular prisms. To find the dimensions of a rectangular prism from the volume, and volume of rectangular prism is length times width times height, we're going to use factoring. Now, we can't actually say, all right, the box has a length of 3x, and the width has a length of, or the width is 4x plus 2, and the height is 3x. No, you will not actually be able to figure out what the length, the width, and the height are. But you will be able to figure out what the three numbers are that could then correspond to the length, the width, and the height. All right, so I need you to be able to figure this out, and we can do it by factoring by grouping, and the three factors will be the dimensions then. Your final answer, your final factored answer, will be the three dimensions of that rectangular prism, also known as a rectangular cylinder. Prism, cylinder, in this case, are interchangeable words. All right, so let's go ahead and do some math. Here is a rectangular prism, also known as a cylinder, rectangular cylinder. And we're going to know that the volume of this, the inside area, what you can fill it up with, is 6g to the third plus 20g to the second plus 16g. All right, so now we're going to try to figure out what the possible length, width, and height is of this rectangular prism. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to pull out a common factor from the entire thing. That would be 2g. I can pull a 2g out of 6g to the third, I can pull a g out of 20g to the second, and I can pull out a 2g from 16g. Great. Now I am ready to factor by grouping, which means the first thing I need to do is actually turn my trinomial into a quadrinomial. And that would be using the stuff from the previous slide. A times c. Well, a times c is 24 in this case because it's 3 times 8. So what times what is 24? And the same two numbers, when you add them up, gives you your center term, 10. Well, that's easy. 6 and 4, 6 and 4. Now we need to rewrite the trinomial as a 4-term polynomial, also known as a quadrinomial. So let's go ahead and do that. 2g, because I still need to keep this, guys, just because I factored it out at the very beginning does not mean it's gone. It still needs to be there, because if you forget it at the end and you check by foiling, you're not going to end up with the answer you had at the very beginning, or at least the question, okay? So now I need to know where to put the 6 and where to put the 4. I know that I need a repeat binomial at the end. So the 4 and the 6 placement is actually important, because then when I factor by grouping, it could throw me off if I put the 4 and the 6 in the wrong place. Well, I know that if I put the 3 and the 6 together, I can pull out 2's, and if I put the 4 and the 8 together, I can pull out a 2 as well. So that is where I'm going to put my placement. I'm going to put the 6 near the 3 and the 4 near the 8. So now let's factor by grouping. Let's group those together. Let's pull out what we can from each. Check that out. I have my repeat binomial, and I'm going to go ahead and form my final answer. And if you factor by group, if you FOIL, you're going to figure out that you're going to get the original volume. So how does this apply to my question? Where each dimension is one of the factors. So this is a factor from my answer, this is a factor from my answer, and this is a factor from my answer, which means one of each of these represents either the length, the width, or the height. There you go. So those are the possible dimensions. Don't know for sure, but those are the possible dimensions. And again, if you were to multiply all of those together, all of those factors together, you should get the original volume of 6g to the third plus 20g to the second plus 16g. All right, I'm done, guys. Bye.